Well, hi there. Bearded dragons might just be the best pet lizard you could possibly get. That's why they were on our very first video, the top 5 pet reptiles for beginners. Because they're excellent. They're so excellent. But these are not bearded dragons. A big reason that we created this channel was to help people discover which pet reptile was the best fit for them. This was a resource that I always really wanted, but it just didn't exist. And I wanted this resource because I study the heck out of every possible pet reptile before I get one. But the reality is, you don't study what you don't know even exists. Many years back, I was trying to find the perfect pet lizard for me. Mostly, I wanted a lizard that wasn't too big or too small and that would hang out with you for a long time without getting stressed. And the answer, time after time after time, was the same. Bearded dragon. But everybody and their bearded dragon has a bearded dragon. That was the main reason that I just didn't want to accept that answer. Eventually, though, I caved. I just kept coming back to the same answer over and over and over again, and I got a bearded dragon. I knew they were the perfect pet lizard for me, and as it turned out, they were even better, and I mean way better than I even expected them to be. But about a week after I got my first bearded dragon, I went to a reptile expo, and for the first time in my life, saw a clown agama, also known as a painted agama, which for years I thought might be different lizards. No, they're the same lizard. And, at least from outward appearances, it looks a heck of a lot like a bearded dragon. But there was one big advantage to the clown agama over the bearded dragon, and that is, it's not a bearded dragon. But that begs the question, is the clown agama, in reality, a worthy alternative to what might be the greatest pet lizard you could possibly have? And of course, is the clown agama the right pet reptile for you? To help us figure this out, we're gonna rate the clown agama based on our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. When it comes to handleability, we give the clown agama a score of 5 out of 5. I honestly thought that this was going to be a place where the clown agama wasn't going to do quite as well as the bearded dragon. These guys have a reputation for being a little bit flightier, and that's not saying a darn thing, because nothing is easier to handle than a bearded dragon. They will just sit and hang out with you for a long time, for so long that you feel like, yeah, I probably should put you away just so you can get back to digesting your food. They will sit on your shoulder for hours, and so it's really impossible to be better to handle than a bearded dragon. These guys are supposedly a little bit more shy than our bearded dragons, and I think that's true, especially because a lot of these are going to be wild-caught imports, and every bearded dragon you encounter is going to be captive bred, and so that's going to make a difference. But man, they're incredibly easy to handle. They're actually exactly the same as bearded dragons to handle. I see no major difference here. This is very bearded dragon-esque. Like bearded dragons, they're not inclined to bite, but being a little bit smaller than bearded dragons, if they did bite you, it wouldn't be quite as severe. I'm scared of bearded dragon bites. They got like chainsaw teeth. Also, like bearded dragons, they're not going to drop this tail, which is delightful. That's actually the case for most agamid lizards. I love that about the agamid lizards. Their little nails aren't too bad, and being smaller than a bearded dragon, they're not going to tear you up with them quite as much as a bearded dragon, so lovely that. And additionally, their poop, it's not going to be as wet or as copious as that of a bearded dragon, so it's not going to be quite as memorable if they do poop on you. But it's not like they do that all the time. They're just great. I mean, a lizard can't get better to handle than this. It's not possible. Really, the only downside to them, period, is the nails, and those actually allow them to hold on a little, which is a nice thing. And really, I mean, you feel them. They're not going to cut you. This is perfection. They're perfection. And if you had a captive bred baby raised up being handled, it's going to be better than a bearded dragon, which is preposterous to say. When it comes to care, we give the clown agama a score of 4 out of 5. Honestly, the biggest downside to their care is just going to be the live feeders. And that's the case for most lizards, but these guys are definitely going to need some insects in their diet, which means you either need to order insects or you need to go to a pet store fairly often. But these guys eat less than do bearded dragons. That's actually one of the biggest downsides to bearded dragons is they eat a ton, especially while they're growing. These guys being a smaller lizard, they just don't eat as much. Lovely. And because they don't eat as much, they don't poop as much. Always great, because one of the downsides to beardies is that they tend to have an aroma because they produce some relatively aromatic feces and in sort of copious amounts because they like to eat so much. These guys eat less, poop less, much better. Very much like beardies, their diet should consist of insects, probably a larger amount of insects per unit other stuff for these guys than beardies. But like beardies, they're also going to enjoy some greens and some fruits as well. So a nice balanced diet. Make sure with all of that, it's dusted with calcium and vitamin supplements. These guys come from a very dry and hot climate in North Africa and the Middle East. And, as a result, their enclosure simulates that. And that's actually pretty nice. Dry habitats are easy to create. The main thing is it's really hard to do a dry habitat bioactive. So you are going to need to spot clean relatively frequently. But less so than with beardies. They're going to need a relatively hot basking spot. They're definitely going to need UVB lighting, so make sure to provide that in addition to the hot basking spot. Make sure you pick a substrate that can be ingested in small quantities, because these guys are going to go around and they're just going to be licking to test temperature and various other attributes of all kinds of surfaces. So they'll be licking up substrate, plus they'll get some when they're hunting. Usually they can handle it, but impaction is definitely a concern, so make sure it's something that they can pass easily. Make sure that they have some hides and places to climb. These guys really like rock faces, so either some sort of simulated rock face. You could even use real rock, as long as you can be sure that there's no way they could end up getting squashed by it. Rocks tend to be heavy. Just important fact of the day. Well, you can also use big pieces of wood, cork bark, really any kind of wood, because mold isn't going to be a problem. You could probably even find wood as long as you bake it for a little bit to kill any sort of bacteria or fungus that might be growing on it. And more than anything, just provide the biggest enclosure that you can. These guys are going to take advantage of a lot of space, and so a big enclosure, definitely the way to go. Today's video is sponsored by Ridge wallets. Ridge wallets do really well when it comes to handleability. They're a very practical size, easy to just slip in your pocket. When it comes to care, perfect score. They require like 0 care because they're durable and hardcore. When it comes to hardiness, again, this thing is like virtually bulletproof, and they have a lifetime warranty, so even if you do break it, no worries. When it comes to availability, well, the Ridge wallet is available online at our link, ridge.com/Clint. When it comes to upfront costs, I will tell you, this is not a super inexpensive wallet. You also get what you pay for, and it's a really nice product. And if cost is an issue, if you use our link, ridge.com/Clint, you get 10% off. If what you want is something that will honestly last forever, the rest of your life, because it's got a freaking lifetime warranty, then the Ridge wallet might be the perfect pet wallet for you. When it comes to hardiness, we give the Clown Agama a score of 4 out of 5. The biggest reason is just that a goodly percentage of these are imports, and imports suffer from import problems. They shouldn't be hard to breed. Supposedly, there are a lot of captive bred individuals out there, and those captive bred individuals should be just rock solid. 5 out of 5. It's just that the minority of all Clown Agamas that you're going to see for sale are captive bred babies. 100% that's the way to go. Because these guys come from a tough desert environment, they will be just tough as nails. Just provide the proper care, and keep in mind that imports will suffer from import problems. We've got a whole video on why captive bred is the way to go. So just get one captive bred and then 5 out of 5. So one kind of cool thing about these guys is there is some sexual dimorphism. It's actually the same with beardies. The females, you can tell, are a little bit smaller. Similar total length, but they're just not as big and stocky, and that head is definitely considerably smaller in the females. I noticed both the head and the tail. They're just not quite as thick as that big old boofy male head and tail. When it comes to availability, we give the Clown Agama a score of 3 out of 5. This is one of those animals that is theoretically easy to breed in captivity, but all I have ever seen for sale are imports. These two come to us from Animal Ark in Orem, Utah, which, if you're gonna buy an import lizard, getting one from an excellent pet shop like that is the way to go, because you can go and see them maybe for weeks at a time, see that they're feeding well, see that they're acclimating well to captivity before you bring one home. You know, they become sort of what you'd call an established captive. And so, you know, they've been in captivity for a while. Definitely still have the ecological concerns of bringing in a wild-caught animal that's not long-term sustainable. And so, you know, I generally recommend this only if you're planning to breed them to provide captive bred babies for the hobby. But Animal Ark is a really great place to go for captive bred animals, which they have tons, but also if you're considering any of these that are only available wild-caught or primarily available wild-caught from a pet store like Animal Ark, great way to go. Obviously, you can find them at pet shops. Like I said, they're mostly going to be wild-caught imports, but they are there. You're also going to see them at almost every expo you go to. Again, all imports. Online, that's probably the place you're going to be able to find captive bred, if anywhere, but for the most part, those are also going to be wild-caught imports. Really, if you want a captive bred one, which is definitely the way to go, you're probably going to have your best luck joining some sort of an Agama group and asking around until you can find the people that are breeding clown Agamas and then just buying one from them directly. That's the way to go. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the painted Agama a score of 3 out of 5. The Agama itself is really not all that expensive. Even if you need to pay for shipping, not a very expensive lizard. This is largely because so many of them are imports, so even the breeders are having to compete with import prices. The enclosure for them should be large, but it doesn't have to be insanely large. The Zen Habitats enclosure that we covered a while back would be perfect for these guys, because like we said, our only complaint with it was that it wouldn't be very good in high humidity situations. These guys don't really need humidity at all in the enclosure, and the lid on that was great for basking lights. I've got a beardy in the one that we got right now, so an enclosure like that would be just perfect. While we're speaking of the Zen Habitats enclosure, we actually got the PVC version in. I haven't built it yet, but we will be building that soon, and I'll let you know what I think of it. The furnishing for these guys is going to be fairly inexpensive. You're going to need substrate, hides, some rocky outcroppings, a water bowl. Nothing all that unusual or expensive. The UVA and UVB lights they're not free. They cost something, but it's not an arm and a leg. You're gonna need calcium and vitamins, and that's it. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's also not super expensive. Also, a good source of feeders is a good idea. We'll have links to all these things down in the description. And that is why overall we give the painted Agama a score of 3.8 out of 5. And that for a lizard that's not as easy to find as is the bearded dragon. So that's pretty amazing. Really, bearded dragons are a better choice for only one reason. They're Australian. No, that wasn't the most lizard continentist statement you've ever heard in your entire life. It matters because being Australian, all bearded dragons available in the pet trade are captive bred. Most painted Agamas are not. But if you can find a captive bred baby, Clown Agama might be even better than a beardy, and they aren't one. So if what you're looking for is a bearded dragon that eats less and poops less and isn't a bearded dragon, then the Clown Agama just might be the perfect pet lizard for you. It might just be the perfect pet lizard, full stop. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
Put a little more accent on that.
They're Australian. Crikey, alright. The dragon. Crikey, alright. G'day. There's only one reason these are better. It's because they're Australian. Talking about the beardies. Not talking about these clown Agamas. Though they're alright too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you sell giant centipedes?
Ooh, there goes the mic. Michelle, you have one job.
Is it still play?
I can't sit in these chairs anymore. I'm tired.
Alright, I think we're done.